Welcome to the Complete Story Series, where I take trade paperbacks and single issues and I break them down into digestible bites to help you understand. Then I read them dramatically back to you. All alterations to the panel, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. Now, at the end of our last video, the newly appointed Green Lanterns, Simon Baz and Jessica Cruz, managed to fend off against Atrocitus and his Red Lanterns. Though the Rage Seed was planted into the earth, soon Atrocitus and the Red Lanterns left. But as they returned home, Simon and Jessica found a new guardian waiting for them by the name of Raimi, and he has come bearing the Phantom Power Ring. But our story doesn't actually start there. Years ago, there was a pilot by the name of Frank Leminski. He wanted to be the best that there was. He pushed himself to the limit during a flight test when he saw a light that changed his life. The jet Frank was in began to fail, and he was saved by the Green Lantern known as Hal Jordan. After seeing the Green Lanterns, Frank knew that he had to be one. When Frank was young, he was never anything special. He was always just there. But now, he can be something. He can be someone. He can be a Green Lantern. So Frank trained, and then word traveled around that there was now a third lantern. But he knows that his time is soon. He knows that they are watching him. Soon a fourth lantern was chosen, but that didn't stop Frank from training and preparing himself for the one day that a ring would come and choose him. He even went as far as to try and show the rings what he could do by doing good in the city. However, on his first night of crime fighting, he was left beaten and bloodied. He dragged himself back to his apartment and he shouted to the rings, asking, "What do they want from him? He's done everything that he can do. What does he have to do to deserve one?" And at that moment, a green light began to shine. Before Frank's eyes, a green power ring floated over, telling him that he has the ability to overcome great fear. He has been chosen! Frank shouts that he accepts, and the ring says, "Welcome to the Green Lantern Corps." And then it begins to state that there has been an error. The ring goes on stating that he does not have the ability to overcome great fear. He has not been chosen. Frank shouts for the ring to stop, but it's already relocated to its new candidate in Guantanamo Bay, and it shoots off. After that night, Frank saw who the ring went to, and he learned that there are even more lanterns out there, all of them getting a ring, even though he was the guy who really deserved it. But one night, that all changed. As Frank entered his apartment, he found a hooded man standing there. The man tells him that he knows all about him. He knows of a ring that anyone can use. A ring known as the Phantom Ring. Frank stops and thinks about it. A power ring that doesn't have to choose its owner? This is it. He can be the big time now. Frank then smiles and asks, "How do I get this ring?" And the man says, "I will help you get it. I know all about the power rings, because 1 billion years ago, I was Volthoom, the first lantern." A short while later, Frank makes his way to Dearborn, Michigan, and after checking out a few houses, he rings the doorbell of one. And as the woman inside asks what she can do for him, he pulls out a lighter and tells her that he needs to borrow her house. He needs to distract someone. Meanwhile, over at Simon's brother-in-law's house, Simon begins to experience all of the emotions of this spectrum at once. Seconds later, Simon is blasted to the ground by Raimi, telling him to never wear the Phantom Ring again. Jessica runs over telling him that that was amazing, and Raimi shouts, "No, that was not awesome." What's the word that you humans use for the opposite of awesome? That's what that was! Raimi then tells them, the Phantom Ring does not evaluate its bearer. There is no shutdown for those less than worthy. There is no safety feature on it, which is why no one should use it. And with that being said, we need to hide immediately. Jessica mentions that she still hasn't gotten word back from Hal, and Simon suggests that they just call for regular backup. Jessica tells him no, she's got this all figured out, and they can't leave Earth. Simon asks if it's because she's afraid to go into space or is it because the Flash is here. And Jessica tells him that this conversation is now over. So Simon says, "Fine, but where are we gonna go?" Jessica says her sister's house in Portland. 2 weirdos and an alien will blend right in over there. But before they can leave, Jessica notices smoke coming from a nearby house. Simon and Jessica run over to contain the fire, and a woman shouts that her daughter is still inside. Simon begins to make a construct to stop the fire from spreading, and Jessica flies inside to have a look for the little girl. After finding her, Jessica tells the little girl that her mom sent her here to get her out of here. She just needs to hang on and not let go. Soon the house begins to crumble and Jessica's barrier ends up protecting the two of them, but then suddenly a giant green hand reaches in, grabbing the barrier. While this is going on, Raimi is sitting out front making sure that no one invades from the skies, and Frank begins to sneak into the house. After a bit of searching, Frank finds the box of the ring, and he puts it on. But before he can, a voice tells him, "Stop!" Raimi then tells Frank the Phantom Ring ruined his life. It will not destroy theirs. He should know. He created it. Frank tells him, "But I want the power ring!" and Raimi begins to charge up for a blast, and that's when suddenly a hand reaches through his body, and Voltham tells him, "I was once an ally to the Guardians, but now I will get my revenge." Voltham tells Frank to say the words that he taught him and put the ring on. In desperate day, in hopeless night, the phantom ring is our light. We yearn for power and strength and might. I seize the ring, that's my right. I am the Phantom Lantern. As the light fades, the phantom ring changes, and soon Frank finds himself now as a Green Lantern. A real Green Lantern. Back over at the house fire, Jessica makes sure that the little girl is safe, and Simon puts her aside to look at something. Then the two of them see a green light fly into the sky, and Simon asks, if they are here, who the hell is that? The light they saw was Frank flying away with Raimi. Not long ago in Coast City, Frank asked Voltham if he was going to be alright with the little guy over there. He tells him that him and Raimi have a lot to discuss. So it's time for you to go out and be a hero, Frank. Frank tells him, yeah, it's time for the world to meet the newest Green Lantern. Over in Kansas, a young boy tries to stop his dog from running into a tornado, and the boy's father runs out of the house telling him to get back inside, and that's when suddenly they're hit by a flying tree branch. Soon the boy tries to run back, and the winds begin to pick him up off his feet. But before the boy can fly off, Frank flies in catching him, telling him, "Don't worry, I'm here to save the day." Back in Michigan, Simon and Jessica are trying to figure out where Raimi and that ring had been taken to, since they can't actually track the phantom ring. It's not a normal ring. Jessica says that she has an idea, and she asks her ring to look for an unidentified emotional spectrum energy signature. The ring comes back with a hit, and it's located in Kansas. Back over in Kansas, Frank tells the local reporters that he was just doing what any hero would do. He just wanted to save the day. Within seconds, Simon and Jessica come rushing and telling everyone to get away from that man. And Frank says, "Welcome, fellow heroes!" And the reporters then ask, "Aren't you all friends?" Simon tells her no, the guy doesn't even have a real Green Lantern ring. He stole it, and we're here to take it back. But before the two of them can blast Frank, the little boy runs in shouting for them to stop. This Green Lantern is a hero. Frank begins to laugh, asking, who are these two people? The Ring Police? Who are they to say that I don't deserve a power ring? Who's to say that they deserve their rings? Simon stops and then says, I deserve one. And Jessica adds that the greatest man to ever wear a ring states that they deserve it. Frank then thinks back to when Hal saved him, and all of the emotions begin to rush through him, and he begins to change back into the Phantom Lantern. Frank tells everyone to shut up! I'm a real Green Lantern! He then turns back to the little boy, but as he looks, the boy tells his dad, I want to go back inside now. All of the emotions begin to change rapidly within Frank, and he shouts, I've earned this! The ring belongs to me! An explosion goes off, and Simon and Jessica grab the locals and reporters to shield them. But through the smoke, all they can hear is Frank shouting, mine, mine, mine! Frank begins tearing through the home shouting, where are the rest of the power rings? They're all mine, mine, mine! Simon and Jessica come rushing and telling Frank to take the ring off, and Frank yells at them stating, I know what you want! You can't have it! And he rockets out of the house. The structure of the house begins to fall, and Simon and Jessica have to stay there to protect the family inside, but after they get outside, Jessica begins to ask, where did that guy go? And Simon says there's only one place someone obsessed with becoming a Green Lantern would go, Coast City. And over in Coast City, Frank tries to control himself, but all of the emotions keep changing within him. As Avarice begins to take back over, Frank tells Voltham that he wants the rings! He wants the very first power ring! Give it to him! And Voltham shouts, silence! Control yourself! Do you really wish to be a Green Lantern coward? Frank begins to focus back on his dedication, and slowly he begins to change back into Will. Voltham stops for a moment and asks, where are the other lanterns now? And Frank tells him that he changed into an orange lantern and he flew out as fast as he could. Voltham then yells at him, you just led them straight here! Stop being a pathetic weakling and prove that you're worthy of the Phantom Ring. Outside, flying over the city, Jessica asks if this guy is really as irredeemable as they think he is. And Simon responds with, what are you talking about? That guy's a wannabe tool. Jessica begins to argue, who are they to judge him? What if they really don't deserve their rings? And Simon thinks about it and begins to think, why is he pursuing this guy so hard? Maybe it's because he wants the Phantom Ring for himself? Jessica begins to think about how she's really afraid. If this guy shouldn't be a Phantom Lantern, then maybe she shouldn't be a Green Lantern. And then Simon's ring goes off with an emotional spectrum disturbance located in Memorial Park. Out in the park, Frank begins posing, telling everyone that he's here to hang out with regular people, just like them. And yes, he's totally cool with taking selfies. As Frank stands there, the people begin to laugh and they begin to mock and make fun of him. And suddenly a construct forms around his hand. When he looks up, he sees Simon controlling the construct, trying to take the ring off. And Frank shouts at him to stop! I can't lose the ring! And his color begins to change to yellow as fear begins to overwhelm him, and he shouts that he will fight them with their biggest fears, themselves. The two yellow constructs of Simon Simon and Jessica begin to charge at the real Simon and Jessica, and Frank tells them that they're being pathetic because their own fears are themselves. And then the Phantom Ring begins to change again. Jessica's fear tells her that she can't do this. She's a failure as a Green Lantern because she doesn't have strength. And Simon's fear crushes down on the construct that he made to fight and tells him how his ring is too weak. All he needs is his gun. The gun will make him feel safe. Meanwhile, during this fight back at the apartment hideout, Raimi wakes up to see Voltham. Raimi leans in stating that he didn't hear much news about the exile, but he did hear how he died, killed by Necron. Voltham then asks if he heard the part where he became all-powerful and almost got revenge on the Guardians. Raimi says that he knows that he's just trying to do the old Malthusian transfer. He taught it to him, but do not go down this path. Raimi goes on to say that no matter what happened back then, you need to listen now. The Phantom Ring was never perfected. In fact, it was barely tested. With a direct connection to the emotional spectrum and no safety regulators, that human is going to explode. Then Raimi asks Voltham if he remembers when he had a power battery put into his chest, the kind of connection that he had. After the battery was ripped out, they had to send him into the Chamber of Shadows and make the Spectrum technology forbidden. Everything that he did in the name of peace and security for the universe. And Voltham shouts, "No more lies! You're a traitor! You put the battery into my chest!" The blast knocks Raimi down, and through his coughs, he says, "You were the one that begged to have it put in there!" But now that he is barely a ghost, Voltham says that it will be his pleasure to use Raimi as a weapon of revenge. Back outside, Jessica begins to think back to when her sister told her how she's going to be the best of the Green Lanterns, and Jessica begins to think she's right. And a construct finally begins to form! As the construct grows, it shoots through the Fear Construct's head. Over with Simon, his Fear Construct tells him that once he's down here, I will go for your nephew next. Using all of his strength, Simon makes another Gauntlet Construct and begins beating the Fear Construct until it fades away. As the two of them get back on the ground, Frank begins screaming as the emotions begin cycling through his current feelings, each change blasting Simon and Jessica away. But after he finally changes back to fear, Frank begins to ask, "Why are you trying to help me?" And Simon tells him helping people is what we do. And Jessica tells him, it's pretty much our jam. That's what being a Green Lantern is all about. But the emotions begin to change again, and soon another explosion goes off, this one much bigger than the last. As the smoke begins to clear, Simon and Jessica burst out through the ground ready for another fight, and that's when they see Frank as an indigo lantern, one of compassion. Frank then calls down to the two of them, telling them that they had every right to let him die, but they've saved him. And because of that, the compassion has bloomed in his heart. He has done some terrible things, but just now he realized how precious every human life is. All he wanted was to become a hero, but instead he put everyone in danger. He was not ready for a power ring. He must take it off immediately. And just then, the ring slides off, and Frank reverts to his normal self. Before Frank has a chance to realize that he took the ring off, Simon charges in, knocking the ring out of his hand. Jessica quickly grabs it and slides it on. Soon she feels all of the emotions of the spectrum, and then it falls back to Will. Not a ton of other emotions, just Will. Frank shouts for her to take off the ring, and she tells him sure, she doesn't need it to do this. And she wraps him up in a construct. She tells Simon to check her out. She's finally starting to feel like the ring was made for her, or she was made for the ring. Does it even make sense? And she hands the Phantom Ring over to Simon, who debates sliding it back on, but before he has a chance to, Jessica calls out to him as she continues making constructs, and Simon decides maybe he shouldn't wear that ring. The two laugh about their adventure, and then a voice calls out to them, and they both turn around to see Vath Sarn and Ismat Cole, two different Green Lanterns responding to the call for backup, and both asking, what the hell is all of this? Simon tries to introduce the two of them to Jessica, but they say that they got the emergency beacon, so where's the emergency? Simon tells them, well, it's kind of a long story. You see, Frank here stole the Phantom Ring. Vath stops him and says that he's never heard of the Phantom Ring before, and this doesn't seem like an emergency. Soon all four of them hear the voice of Raimi telling them that it is in fact an emergency. Izamoth says that he thought the Guardians were dead, and Raimi tells him that he's not dead, just exiled. Simon asks what about Voltham, and Raimi holds up an energy sphere, telling them that Voltham has been vanquished. He won't be escaping this energy sphere. Izamoth tells Raimi that he needs to come back with them to the planet Mogo. John Stewart will need to speak with them immediately. And Raimi looks at them and says, who are you to order me around? I created the first of the Green Lantern rings, and I will remain on Earth to assist Simon and Jessica since no one of the Corps will. Jessica laughs, telling Raimi that he told them off. Being old does have its advantages, huh? And then Jessica asks what happened with Voltham that allowed him to escape. Raimi says that Voltham was an old friend, so it was easy to trick him into defeating himself. And as the three of them walk away, Raimi tells them that they're both undisciplined and untrained, but they have the potential to shine. So with their strength and his guidance, the energy sphere begins to form a face. And that's when we see that it's Raimi shouting, "That's not me!" And Voltham, as Raimi, finishes, "The Earth will be in good hands." And this concludes one of my favorite new arcs in the Green Lantern saga. The idea of a phantom ring is just amazing. A ring that has no limitations and you can be every one of the possible lanterns out there with all of the different powers. That's just so cool and gives us a lot of potential for a really, really big bad guy eventually. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think about the phantom ring, and don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Comicstorian, and I'll see you next time right here.